All right, welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going deep into something, pretty profound, a letter actually,
Hmm?
from Imam Abu Hamid Muhammad Al-Ghazali.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I mean a really renowned scholar, right, to a student of
Yeah,
his. And
yeah,
and you shared this with us and it really get us thinking about,
yeah.
like what knowledge truly benefits us, in this life and in the next, and how can we live, a more meaningful life.
Yeah, I think what's really interesting about this letter is the context of why it was even written in the first place.
Yeah.
Um, the student had spent years studying religious texts,
Right.
but he still felt this kind of
Like lost.
lost, yeah,
Yeah.
about, what would actually help him in the afterlife.
Yeah.
And he specifically sought out this guidance from the Imam,
Right.
which is interesting because Imam Al-Ghazali had already written so much on these topics.
Oh, so there's tons of books.
Exactly.
But he still wanted to what should I be focusing on?
Yeah, it's like saying, I have all these resources, but
Right.
give me the specific thing that's going to,
Right. Help me. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So, I mean, right away, Imam Al-Ghazali lays out his central point,
He does.
doesn't he? That it's like true benefit comes from the knowledge you put into action.
Right.
It's that aligning your life with the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him.
Exactly. And he really emphasizes that anything that goes against that
Yeah.
is ultimately useless.
Right.
And he even quotes this hadith, which is a saying of the Prophet,
Yeah.
about seeking refuge
Right.
from knowledge that doesn't benefit.
Mm.
And what I find interesting about that is
Well, it makes you think about how much do we just learn and it doesn't actually change
oh boy.
how we live,
It's like head knowledge versus
Yeah.
heart knowledge.
Yeah.
And he uses this very powerful image of someone who has all these weapons,
Right.
but they're facing a lion and they don't use those weapons.
Yeah.
And they're like, well, what good were those weapons?
Totally useless, right?
If you didn't put them into action.
Yeah.
He's saying it's the same thing with knowledge.
Right.
You can have all this knowledge,
It's not going to save you.
but if you're not putting it into action,
Right.
then what good is it really?
Yeah.
And he talks about the consequences, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Of not acting on what,
Yeah.
like he mentions this severe torment
Right.
for a scholar who doesn't benefit from his knowledge.
Hmm.
And then he also talks about the dream of Shaykh Junaid Baghdadi,
Yeah.
this really, I think, fascinating spiritual figure
Yeah.
where only the prayers that he offered
Right.
in the third part of the night, the last third of the night,
Yeah.
those were the only ones that actually benefited him after death.
Right.
So it's even amongst all the amazing things he did,
Right.
there were certain actions that were more beneficial than others.
Wow. Yeah.
And that's really, highlights that it's not just about outward scholarly achievements,
Yeah.
but about those personal, acts of devotion.
Right. It's the quality of the action and of the knowledge, not just the quantity.
Absolutely, yeah. And he even brings in the Quran.
Yeah.
Yellen mentions the verse where, human beings will get only what they strive for.
Right. Right.
And while, acknowledging that there are different understandings of that verse,
Right.
he immediately follows that up by emphasizing deeds
Yeah.
with a lot of verses that highlight, righteous actions alongside faith.
Right. So it's not just faith, but also
Exactly.
actions.
Right.
So that raises the question then, okay, well, what kind of striving are we talking about? What
Yeah.
kind of striving truly matters?
Yeah.
And he clarifies this beautifully with another hadith.
Yeah.
And he actually defines faith,
Yeah.
not just as words, not just belief,
Right.
but as action on those teachings. So it's about embodying.
Embodying it.
Yeah.
Living it out.
Living it out. Yeah.
And while he acknowledges that paradise is through God's grace,
Right.
he emphasizes that we need to make ourselves worthy of that mercy
Right.
through our worship.
I like that.
Right.
Make yourself worthy. Yeah.
And he shares a couple of stories, too, that are really impactful.
Yeah.
There's the story of a worshiper from the children of Israel,
Right.
Whose worship was initially rejected, but because of his constant devotion,
Right.
his worship was eventually accepted.
Wow. So it's the consistency.
It's the consistency, it's the sincerity behind it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then there's this really beautiful saying of Ali, cousin of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him,
Right.
where he says, paradise without deeds is delusion,
Right.
and
Yeah.
striving alone is just mere hard work.
So it's got to be the right kind of.
It's got to be the right kind of effort.
Yeah.
And it goes back to intention too, right? Are we seeking knowledge for just worldly gain? Or are we seeking knowledge to really strengthen our connection with God.
Yeah, and that's what he's talking about, right?
Exactly.
It's like, woe to you or happiness and blessings to you. It's like,
Okay.
it depends on what your intention is.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is he then goes on to talk about these 8 key benefits
Oh, yeah, yeah.
from Hatim binism,
Yeah.
which are like these really practical takeaways, I think.
What's like the essence of these 8?
What I find fascinating is they're almost like these universal principles that you see across different faiths,
Yeah.
and he's kind of gleaning them from his own life experience.
Right.
And they include things like, making good deeds your beloved for companionship in the grave, opposing your lower self's desires,
Right.
which you see echoed in the Quran too.
Right.
Spending your possessions in the way of Allah,
Right.
which, again, the Quran talks about.
Yeah.
Understanding that true honor is in God consciousness. Taqwa. Accepting Allah's distribution of livelihood.
Right.
Treating Satan as the only true enemy.
Right.
Trusting in Allah for your sustenance.
Yeah.
And then placing your complete reliance, tawakkul, on him.
It's amazing how timeless those are.
They really are.
They
transcend time and place.
Yeah, for sure.
And he then goes on to talk about the importance of a spiritual guide.
Oh, yeah, the Shaykh.
Yeah, the Shaykh.
Right.
And he uses this analogy of a farmer, weeding the crops.
Right.
Like you need someone to kind of guide you.
Right, to cultivate that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what are some of the crucial qualities?
Yeah, what are we looking for in a Shaykh?
Well, according to Imam Al-Ghazali, a true Shaykh is detached from worldly desires. They're part of a sound spiritual lineage.
So there's that chain of transmission.
Yeah, there's that connection.
Yeah.
They practice piety.
Right.
They have excellent moral character.
Right.
And they possess this spiritual insight.
Yeah.
Like this illumination.
Right.
And he really highlights the importance of both outward respect for a guide and inward trust.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right.
Yeah, it's not just like blind obedience.
Yes, exactly. It's that you trust that they're guiding you to the right place.
Yeah.
And then he touches on some like core concepts too, like Tasawwuf, servitude,
Right, yeah.
reliance, and sincerity, ikhlas.
Can you break those down briefly for us?
Sure. So like Tasawwuf can be understood as, obeying the Sharia, which is Islamic law,
Right.
doing good to creation.
Okay.
It's about loyalty to Allah and sincerity to the people.
Yeah.
Servitude means obeying that divine law,
Yeah.
being content with your destiny, aligning yourself with Allah's will.
Right.
Reliance, tawakkul, means having firm faith
Yeah.
in Allah's promises.
Okay.
And then sincerity, ikhlas, is about doing deeds solely for Allah,
Right.
unaffected by praise or criticism.
Wow.
Recognizing that all creation has no power in and of itself. It's all coming from Allah.
Right. And he ends with 8 pieces of advice, right?
Yeah, he offers 8 admonitions.
So what should we really focus on here?
I think what's really key is the practicality of this advice.
Right.
So he advises to avoid these unnecessary debates where it can cause more harm than good.
Right.
Focus on seeking the truth, not just winning an argument.
Right.
And he even gives signs of what right intention looks like. He cautions against preaching without first practicing yourself.
Right.
Focus on the realities of the afterlife.
Yeah.
And inspiring genuine change in people.
Yeah.
He warns against seeking the favor of the affluent and the rulers. And even accepting their gifts. Because that can lead to corruption.
Yeah, it's like that detachment.
Exactly. And then he outlines 4 actions.
Okay.
Like how should we conduct ourselves with Allah? How should we conduct ourselves with other people?
Yeah.
And it's about, treat Allah as you would want your servant to treat you. Treat others as you would want to be treated.
Right.
Prioritize beneficial knowledge as if life is ending soon.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Focus on that inner reflection over just superficial learning.
Right.
And avoid this excessive, stockpiling of worldly goods. Trust in Allah's provision. And then he ends with this beautiful recommendation for supplication.
Yeah, prayer. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And he advises us to seek out, prayers from authentic collections of the Prophet's traditions.
Right.
And from the Prophet's family, the Al-Bayt.
Okay.
And the supplication that he provides in this letter
Right.
is really like this comprehensive example of how to ask Allah for his blessings.
Right.
For mercy, for guidance, and for protection.
Yeah, so it's all-encompassing.
For all aspects of your life
Right.
now and in the hereafter.
Yeah, so it's for you listening,
Yeah.
the powerful message from this letter, I think, is clear, right?
Yes.
That knowledge is incredibly valuable.
It-
But its real impact, that lasting impact,
Yeah.
comes from actually putting it into practice.
Embodying it.
Aligning your life consciously
Yeah.
with that divine guidance.
Absolutely.
So it's about that deep self-reflection and prioritizing the actions that are really going to prepare us for what truly matters.
And that kind of leads to a question for you.
Yeah.
Out of those 8 benefits that Hatim Binism outlined,
Right.
which one really resonates with you right now?
Mm-hmm.
And what's one small step that you can take today
Yeah.
to actually start incorporating that principle into your life?
Yeah, so simple, small steps every single day.
One step at a time.
Yeah, make it a habit.
Exactly.
All right. Great discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Until next time, this is The Deep Dive.